Hi, this is Dee at Aloha Astro, and today is a new moon in Cancer, July 20th, 2020. Let's take a look at what I've got written for the forecast. Here's an interesting image I found, public domain. It's an old political cartoon, and unfortunately I can't blow these up, but if you're able to blow up and read what's in the corners here, this is an interesting look back in time, back at the French Revolution, and I feel that astrologically we're looking at a society revolution at the moment with political overtones definitely, and choices that people make now and how they express themselves may have very important effect on the future politically and personally, of course, in our lives. New moon in Cancer, Monday, July 20th, brings world events and conditions uncomfortably over the threshold of your home and your emotional boundaries as the moon joins the sun, and together they oppose Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn. Those three Capricorn planets are all retrograde, and this new moon may reveal that plans to reopen the USA resulted in a surge of COVID-19 that will require a step back for the economy and greater care to be taken in doing what you can to stay safe and prevent the spread of the virus. With Mercury in Cancer square to Mars conjunct Chiron in Aries and sextile to Uranus in Taurus, activism will surge due to the perceived threat to personal and family security. The idealism offered by Neptune and Pisces trine to the moon and sextile to the Capricorn planets can be the catalyst that tips the discontent and tension of the Cancer-Capricorn opposition toward a history-making revolution as the North Node in Gemini forms a quincunx with Saturn. Venus in Gemini sextile to Mars in Aries quickens the urge for a fresh start. The seeds of change can be planted now, but the results may not be seen until Jupiter and Saturn enter Aquarius in December. Stay strong. Now, astrologically, when something is natalized or begun, an event, the meeting of a person, a first date, the initiating of a business, launching of a business, we natalize events, and I feel like this particular new moon has strong natalizing effect or the beginning of something, and I feel it has more to do with the consciousness or shift in consciousness that is opening up and the decision to go one way or another based on the North Node in Gemini. When we look at 6 months later, very often, let's say you begin a relationship and that natalizes the beginning of the relationship. You have a chart that takes effect then. 6 months later, the faster moving planets of Mercury, Sun, Venus are on the opposite side of the chart wheel from where they were when you first met that person and you began the relationship. And very often in relationships, the 6-month mark is the kind of step back and take a look and decide to either move forward or split up at the 6-month mark. And 6 months from today, we are looking at the presidential inauguration on January the 20th of 2021. And if I were to be able to, be such an amazingly accurate psychic that I could tell you what's going to be happening, I would go ahead and do that. But I have the feeling that it's being determined right now by people's consciousness, the collective consciousness of society. We have Neptune, which rules the 12th house, and that is the collective consciousness of society, is also the spiritual side of things. Right now supporting the Capricorn planets and the sun and the moon, although that trine is beginning to fade a bit because it's moving just outside of that 8-degree difference. But it's been there for the last week. Now as the sun and the moon are moving forward, it's beginning to fade. Looking at things from the perspective of idealism or what is the highest and best for everybody, this can also indicate a level of divine intervention or finding the faith or the belief that things have to improve. that can have a very strong effect on people's consciousness now. And then we have this quincunx aspect going on with the North Node in Gemini. Gemini is a mutable, dualistic air sign. It also rules the third house of communication, formative ideas, your neighbors, people you treat like brothers and sisters, your own siblings. The aspect it is making right now, the sextile to Mars and Chiron conjunct in Aries, and Mars is really fired up in its own sign, is ready to initiate new things. Aries says, I am. And we have it here in a tense aspect with Mercury and with a favorable aspect, a supportive aspect to Venus. And there's some need here to speak, to communicate, to express thoughts and feelings, to be motivated to an action and a choice as a result of being under the pressure of fear or insecurity and knowing that something needs to happen, needs to change. Change is also on everybody's mind because of Mercury in Cancer making this sextile to Uranus and Taurus. We've got an opposition, of course, between the Moon and the Sun and the Capricorn planets, and we will have to see what occurs when we go around to the other side of the year of the 6-month mark in January, and we no longer have these planets, Jupiter and Saturn, in retrograde. They will be coming out of retrograde they come out of retrograde by the end of September, and then they come out of Capricorn around the middle of December. So we're going to see shifts in stages, first as Jupiter and Saturn come out of retrograde by the end of September, and then as they move into Aquarius and no longer backtrack into Capricorn in mid-December, moving into January. I do believe that things will be different. I don't know how, but the Capricorn kind of quagmire that we've just been stuck in for quite a while will be, I think, drying up, literally. And hopefully there will be changes in society that benefit the whole and benefit people at a more, the common man level is what we're looking at with Gemini energy, as well as the needs of society as a whole and the freedom and independence and acceptance of individuality all comes under Aquarius. Here we have more of the old school, traditional authority, patriarchal energy and the old form and structures, and they're going through major upheaval, and there's a desire, especially for those I think who are profiting on the financial level, to hold on to the old. Eventually we're going to see the destructive energy of not growing, of not changing, of not adapting, of not making better use of our resources, or catching up with how life is moving forward, trying to hold on to a lot for a few select people versus being able to help the individual or society as a whole be able to move ahead. So I do think that there's going to be a lot of energy in place over the next 6 months toward a political revolution. I know that we've got this whole uneasy climate going on right now because people's health and financial security as well is being impacted by the coronavirus. I don't know whether that will also improve as we go into September and then again into December. Possibly there will be some result from clinical trials on vaccinations, and we may be able to move forward in a healthier way as we're looking at the winter time. But for now, I would say hold on to your hat. It's going to be a pretty rough ride, at least through the rest of July and August, especially while we have the energy right now of the Cancer season. Once we move into the Leo season, Let's just jump ahead here a bit. We enter the Leo season and begin to have a trine going on to Mars and to Chiron. We still have some tense energy with the square to Uranus when we find the cardinal square here with Mars and the Capricorn planets. So does it get any easier? I don't think so. If anything, though, I think that causes become more emboldened, or people get more proactive and more vocal, and maybe we see some actual things begin to happen as a result of activism and calls for change. The Leo energy is full of passion and courage and fire. So we lose some of the fear and the self-protection and the worry of Cancer, and we move into Leo, and it's much bolder. It's willing to take the risks. It's willing to stand up and be heard, rather than, oh, I'm scared I might lose something or somebody might hurt me. Now we've got much bolder hero type of energy coming into play as we move into August. But I still feel we're going to have a bit of a rough ride. We'll still have some opposition going on to the Capricorn planets, and we're going to have a square going on for a bit with Mars to the Capricorn planets as well. So there's going to be a lot of push, a great deal of push. And we will have Venus catching up to the North Node. I look at that as favorable in your personal life, as well as in terms of how the world is moving forward, that even if things appear as though they are really bad, I think it's really bad to get better, if that makes sense. Very often we do have to go through crisis before we have change. So I do think that things will begin to get better for people on an individual level, in terms of perhaps being heard, being seen, having their needs met, coming together as a group collectively, calling for accountability, especially from government, and calling for support from government as well. We'll have to see what happens as we get up there, but in the meantime, this is an intense new moon. And it's always rather intense as we sit in the dark of the new moon. Cancer will, of course, it has to do with the fourth house of home, family, and psychological foundations. No matter where it falls in your chart, those issues may come up for you about how are you going to care for your home, your family, where can you get help if you need it, how much more can you put up with what's going on. People may feel overwhelmed and turn to anything that comforts them at this point. Cancer moon, you often find that people are busy eating, cooking comfort food, calling their moms. Definitely check in with family members during this new moon. Make sure everybody's okay, mentally, emotionally, physically okay, and touch base. Let's take a look at the Sabian symbols, and I'm not sure if it's politically correct, and it refers back to the past one, which is probably not very politically correct, and then it asks us to look ahead at the one coming afterwards. So today we're looking at the moon being at 28 degrees 27 minutes of Cancer. We round up to 29 degrees. A Greek muse weighing newborn twins in golden scales. Keynote, the intuitive weighing of alternatives. This symbol seems to show that the return to nature pictured in the preceding symbol is only one of two possibilities. Somehow the repolarization of consciousness and life activities implied by that symbol may be more a dream or ideal than a practical reality. I see symbolism in here with newborn twins, with our North Node in Gemini at this point, and Venus approaching it. the repolarization of consciousness and life activities and dream and ideal, that would definitely coincide with Neptune at this point. In any case, at this stage in the process of individualization, two ways are open. The individual person may hesitate before making his decision. His intuition, the muse, is able to show him what the choice is. Perhaps there can be a way of combining the two alternatives. But as the next symbol implies, the one which in the end has the greatest appeal may not be the nature way. The white boy may rather bring the Indian girl to the city, as in Pocahontas's life story. And this is where it's referring back to the previous symbol, which would have been the moon just before it approaches the new moon. An Indian girl introduces her white lover to her assembled tribe. Inner rebirth through a total acceptance of the primordial values manifest in the human body and its natural functions. Let's move on and back here. The fourth stage of this sequence of symbols reveals to us the pro and con operation of the mind when faced with a vital decision. Because it is the muse that is doing the weighing, it is apparent that forces deeper or higher than the intellect are actually at work. The intuitive mind, or what Jung calls the anima, i.e. the psychic function which relates ego consciousness to the collective unconscious. What we see happening at the very threshold of a new cycle is an inner presentation of alternatives. And interesting, the word threshold, I used it in the first sentence of my forecast before I went and looked at what the symbol is for today. And then I find it interesting when we look ahead to the next degree as the moon tips over momentarily to 30 degrees, a daughter of the American Revolution. And the word revolution just came through so clearly to me when I looked at the transits right now in the new moon. And then I got this idea of history repeating, and other times, other societies where there were revolutions, where society changed so radically. And I was reading up on the French Revolution. It was a 10-year process, or it's considered that, from start to finish, it took place over 10 years. Keynote, the prestige, a daughter of the American Revolution. Keynote, the prestige and conservatism of a long-maintained heritage. Here we have a symbol of the proud preservation of socio-cultural values in a tradition. After several generations, the ancestor, who was perhaps a violent revolutionist, or rabble-rouser, or even a fugitive from justice, acquires a halo of respectability. The tradition that was once born of revolution now extols law and order, attempting to suppress any new forms of the same revolutionary spirit. This is the last symbol of the section of the cycle, referring mainly to the consolidation and concretization of life urges within a stable form of organization. In many instances, the scenes presented picture social activities or events, yet at this stage it is the individual person and the problems attendant upon his development that are primarily considered. Now that is interesting, because right now with the Capricorn and the Cancer energy, we're looking at the organization, and yet we really have to go within and look at ourselves and think about what's important in our lives and how we would like to live our lives, and then come together as a collective, society-wise. And if you consider the foundation of our country, we revolted, and we have revolution. I feel revolution is taking place right now, and I do think that it's going to become more evident in the months ahead. This eighth scene, with a keynote of consolidation, began with the study of a traditional symbol for personality integration, the mandala. It ends with an example of what occurs when the individual chooses a path which totally embodies and glorifies tradition, a path which ends in a glorification of the past. I think there's a word of caution or warning in overly glorifying our past rather than looking toward our future at this point. Okay. So anything else that jumps out here? Back to today. Stay home, stay safe. Um, be responsible for yourself as much as you are able. Listen to your intuition. Pay attention to your family. Take care of your needs on the emotional and the physical level. And watch your level of worry or anxiety or stress. Apply that energy, if you feel it bottling up in you physically, towards something that you do have some control over. On my list of things to do is to just go through all the clutter that I have around, things that I just don't use or need anymore, and clear out the house, home and family. And you may also want to do that because Mars is very physical and it makes you want to get up and do things. And here it's in some contentious energy with Mercury that's trying to solve problems that are, so big that perhaps you can't. Just get busy on the things that you can control right now while you consider what's going on in your mental, emotional state. And then if there are things that you want to express, let's say to political leaders, go ahead, write it out. Give yourself time to think about things over this new moon for the next 2 days. And hopefully you'll have more clarity as we move into the moon. Let's see when it begins to shift. So it will be in Leo tomorrow. The intensity of today begins to relax a little bit tomorrow. Of course, we still have the sun in opposition, but the moon will be in a trine to Mars and in a sextile to Venus tomorrow. And you may feel generally more proactive, more hopeful, have a better idea of what it is that you want and which direction you're headed in. But for today, take it easy and be kind and gentle to yourself and others.